John and Ken Show. John Kobylt and Ken Chiampou. Tax Revolt 2010 heads on a stick. We're giving you all this climate news because the biggest threat to the economy in California is the Global Warming Final Solutions Act, signed by Schwarzenegger, passed by the legislature 4 years ago, and now it's being implemented by the California Air Resources Board, by Jerry Brown, the Attorney General. Jerry the Job Killer is going to be running for governor, and this Global Warming Final Solutions Act will be absolutely just it's really going to be a huge economic disaster. You know, we don't pull the fire alarm very often on the show, but I'm telling you, we're pulling the fire alarm on this one. It's got to be stopped. There's petitions that are going to be circulating very soon. You can't have this implemented. It'll wreck what's left of the California economy. And what's really galling, it's based on a lot of wacko science. And that's what we're in the process of explaining to you. So just stick with us over the next hour. We're going to talk a little bit more now to Anthony Watts. He's a weathercaster at KPAY Radio in Chico, California. He's got a website, What's Up With That? And through his own research of personally inspecting weather stations and then getting photos of weather stations around the country, he's determined, what's that again, 90% of the weather stations
90% don't meet the government's basic 100-foot rule to keep them away from heat sources.
So the reason that all these weather stations are reporting slightly higher temperatures is that these weather stations are being exposed to heat sources.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah, well, and again, go through some of the heat sources that you commonly find.
Well, we found them directly on asphalt. The University of Arizona in Tucson, their weather station is on the asphalt parking lot. They couldn't find any place else to put it, so they put it on the parking lot, physically on it. We find them next to, well, there's a radio station in Minnesota that we found, an AM radio station, and behind the building where the transmitter is, they've got the big air conditioners to cool the transmitter room.
Right.
There's a weather station right next to these air conditioning units. And so you've got the heat blowing up from the heat exchangers and the sensors right there. Well, does that attribute to it? Maybe.
Well, now, tell me what you think. The people at East Anglia University, the people at the UN climate panel, did they know this? Did they not care? Are they purposely putting out a hoax?
I listened to you guys on the way in, and you described Phil Jones' office as being, full of clutter. Do you think he ever got out much and took a look at this stuff? And that's the problem. These guys at the top of the climate food chain in science don't get out and look at where the measurements are being done and how the experiment's being performed.
Because it starts with the basic weather station data, right?
Right.
The temperature records from the thousands of weather stations around the world.
Exactly. And a lot of these are compromised. For example, in the globe, there's a thing called the GHCN, the Global Historical Climatological Network. It used to have a good selection of city plus urban stuff in it. Now it's been compacted, and now it's only almost airports. 92% of it is airport weather stations. And you mentioned that one about Rome. There's the one there where it's getting jet exhaust. So, they
got a weather station that's been compromised by jet exhaust.
Yeah.
In Rome. Yeah,
in Rome, at
airport.
the Ciampino Airport. George Carlin had a great shtick back in the early 60s called the hippy-dippy weatherman. One of his things that he said there on that was, why do they always give the temperature at the airport? Nobody lives there.
Is this what led you to become a skeptic then on climate change? You said back in 1990, 91, you
early
were really
90s,
full on board with it.
I was full into the whole thing.
He drives an electric car.
Yeah, I do. I've got an electric car. And I think, reducing pollution, real pollution, nitrous oxides, things like that, carbon soot, that kind of stuff, that's a good thing. It's a good thing to be more energy efficient. I just put LED lighting in my house. And, and I drive an electric car back and forth to my office. Those are a good thing, not a problem. But the scare that's being put together related to the CO2 and global warming is just a little bit overblown, I think.
What do you think about California's climate change law?
Well, I think it's probably going to cause more trouble than it's going to help. It's making businesses do things that they are going to have a lot of trouble implementing.
And it's going to be tremendously costly.
It is. But I'm not an expert on all of that. I'm the weather station guy, so you leave the politics and AB 32 out of it for me.
Right, yeah, I know. But what we're doing is we're using the information we're getting from you and all these other sources to prove that the base theory here, that global warming is absolute settled science, unequivocally the globe is warming, nobody could possibly make that claim.
Well,
and that's why as wacky as it sounds, your weather station data is the nub, is the root of all this.
It is.
Because if the thermometers around the world, if you can't trust the reading compared to 100 years ago, And seriously, how accurate would a thermometer be 100 years ago?
Well,
how the hell would we know that that they weren't compromised 100 years ago?
Well, actually, the thermometers 100 years ago are pretty much the same ones they use in those certain types of weather stations today. The mercury thermometers, those are quite accurate. They're accurate to 1/10 of a degree. But here's a surprise. Did you know that a lot of these weather stations are operated by private citizens, what they call the Cooperative Observer Network? And people have these in their backyards in the middle of Illinois or Nebraska and places like that. But there's also some at airports, and there's some at wastewater treatment plants. But these thermometers are accurate to 1/10 of a degree, these mercury thermometers. But the Weather Service, NOAA, NCDC, all these guys instruct them to round it to the nearest digit. So if the temperature high for the day is 95.6, they call it 96.
Well, that can make a big difference when they have these very small differences in temperatures.
This Professor Phil Jones is talking about 12/100ths of a Celsius degree difference between 1995 and now. So to me, that's margin of error. Well, don't you think? 12/100ths of a degree?
Well, that's part of the problem. We believe that the signal is swamped by the error in the whole network.
You know, when I was a kid, I put together my own weather station. And I nailed this thermometer, which I got from the Edmund Scientific Company, to a tree. And then I had to take these wooden boards and surround the thermometer to protect it from the sun. And it was a real pain in the neck. And I used to keep track every day of the high and the low temperature. It was a special thermometer, mercury thermometer, that recorded the high and low temperature. And what I didn't account for is the tree would grow. And as the tree grew, it pulled the wooden boards farther and farther apart away from the thermometer. So the sun kept hitting the tree. And plus, depending on the time of the year, the sun angle would mess up the temperature readings. So I found it really hard to get, a consistent statistical record of temperatures, because all you need is a little bit of sunlight, a little growth of the tree, and everything got screwed up. Anyway, thank you for your time. Thank you for coming here.
My pleasure.
Yes, Anthony Watts, we appreciate it. Again, his website, Watts Up With That. It's WATTS upwiththat.com.
All right, when we come back, we're going to tell you about this BBC interview with Professor Phil Jones, who has made a huge mess of this global warming scheme. This is the John and Ken Show.